Coming up on our newscast tonight. Meeting with his top aides, President Moon Jae-in expressed his thoughts on North Korea's visible commitment to fulfilling promises made at the Inter-Korean summit, namely steps to denuclearize and releasing detained U.S. citizens. With the historic Pyongyang-Washington summit coming up, U.S. Secretary of State and Security Advisor outlined details of how things could work out with the regime. Dismantle nuclear weapons, give up related programs in exchange for security assurance and investment. South Korea's National Assembly is at a standstill. So far, no agreement was reached to normalize sessions, meaning by-elections could be pushed back for some to April next year. News Center begins now. It's 8 p.m. here in Korea, live from our studio in Seoul. This is Arirang News Center. Welcome, I'm Daniel Choi. President Moon Jae-in gave North Korea 2 thumbs up for its decision to disclose the dismantlement of nuclear test site to the world. Arirang Chief Cheongae correspondent Moon Gun-young starts us off with the highlight from his weekly meeting at the top office.
South Korean President Moon Jae-in applauded North Korea's decision to shut down its nuclear testing ground later this month, referring to the move as the start of the regime's denuclearization process.
북한이 미국인 응유자의 석방에 이어 풍계리 핵실험장 폐기를 국제사회에 투명하게 공개하기로 한 것을 높이 평가하고 환영합니다.
Speaking at a weekly meeting of his top aides is the South Korean president who has been playing the mediator role in laying the groundwork for the North Korea-U.S. summit slated for June 12th in Singapore, said the latest measure by Pyongyang carries special meaning in 3 aspects. 1, it'll be the initial stage in the complete denuclearization of North Korea. 2, it can be viewed in positive light as it reflects North Korea's commitment to the success of the upcoming North Korea-U.S. summit. And 3, President Moon highly regards the move in that the North Korean leader is taking steps in fulfilling each promise made at the April 27th InterKorean summit. Mr. Moon added that both sides are making great efforts to make the first ever Kim-Trump summit a success, that South Korea is also working together to make that happen, as the entire world hopes to see that as well.
우리 정치권도 부디 이 문제만큼은 한 마음이 되는 정치를 국민들께 보여주기 바랍니다.
No mention of North Korea's failure to include international experts at the Punggye shutdown as promised at the Inter-Korean summit. It is quite possible that North Korea's ceremonial dismantlement will end up a ceremony, and there's no denying that both Presidents Moon and Trump are very much aware that expert presence is a must in verifying North Korea's denuclearization process. The fact that neither one has raised an issue but welcomed the move as a goodwill gesture is leading more analysts to believe that the real denuclearization deal is in the works and will be made at the historic Kim-Trump summit next month. Moon Gun-young, Arirang News, the Blue House.
Less than a month before another historic summit unfolds, the U.S. recently mentioned security assurances and private investment from American firms could be provided to North Korea if it completely gives up its nuclear weapons. Lee Seung-jae has the latest from Washington.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who recently returned from his second trip to Pyongyang, says the U.S. will allow the American private sector to invest in North Korea, but only if the regime agrees to fully dismantle its nuclear weapons program.
I am confident that says, if you do the things we need to do so that America is no longer held at risk by your nuclear weapons arsenal, and that you get rid of your CBW program and missiles that threaten the world, we'll ensure that your people have the opportunity for the greatness that I know Chairman Kim wants them to have.
In an interview with CBS News on Sunday, Pompeo added North Korea would get much-needed energy assistance from private capital, speculating that one day the North may even rival the economic prosperity of the South.
They will get private capital that comes in. North Korea is desperately in need of energy support, electricity for their people. They're in great need of agricultural equipment and technology, the finest from the Midwest that I come from. We can deliver that. And as I said earlier this week, we can create conditions for real economic prosperity for the North Korean people that will rival that of the South.
Pompeo's remarks come despite the Trump administration's previous emphasis on not following the paths of past U.S. governments that offered economic aid to Pyongyang in return for incremental steps to end its nuclear program. However, Pompeo insists the model used by the Trump administration is fundamentally different, and they are hopeful the outcome will be fundamentally different as well. Will such a massive change be seen in a country long known as the Hermit Kingdom? Most experts believe it's too early to say, but we may be closer to having an answer to that question after the North Korea-US summit that's set for June 12th in Singapore. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
We have more details on what America expects from North Korea ahead of the hotly anticipated meeting. National Security Advisor John Bolton laid out the specifics of denuclearization. Lee Jae-in shares with us his remarks.
As the first North Korea-US summit draws ever closer, observers are also getting a clearer picture on how Pyongyang's denuclearization will go. In an interview with ABC News on Sunday, U.S. National Security Advisor John Bolton went through the specifics of the permanent and irreversible denuclearization the Trump administration wants to see. He said a permanent denuclearization would mean not just dismantling its nuclear weapons, but also involve the regime giving up its uranium enrichment and plutonium reprocessing programs, as the North had previously agreed to do. Bolton added that is something the North would have to show before benefits start flowing into the regime. The hawkish hardliner also said the North is going to have to reveal all of its nuclear-related locations and allow completely open inspections. But he did acknowledge that nobody believes it's going to be easy and that discussions with the North would be necessary. Bolton also hinted at the possibility of experts from the U.S. or other countries taking the wheel in the actual deconstruction of the North's nuclear weapons, as it's not the remit of the International Atomic Energy Agency. While Bolton mentioned ballistic missile, chemical, and biological weapons as issues to be discussed, he said nobody believes the two sides can complete the ending of the North's nuclear program in one day. But he said the U.S. is very interested in operationalizing the commitment as quickly as possible, and that too is in Pyongyang's interest if it wants economic rewards fast. In light of the 3 American detainees having safely returned to the U.S. last week, Bolton said human rights is also likely to be on the table when President Trump and Kim Jong-un meet in Singapore on June 12th. He said Trump will certainly raise the question of Japanese abductees during his summit with the North Korean leader, as Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has urged Trump and South Korean President Moon Jae-in to do so numerous times. Seeing Pyongyang's drive to denuclearize as its hopes to be seen as a normal nation and have economic exchanges with the world, Bolton said the North is on the right path and Washington is prepared to open trade and investment ties with North Korea as soon as it can. Lee Ji-won, Arirang News.
A flurry of diplomatic activities in and around the Korean Peninsula as we build up to the Washington-Pyongyang summit. For an overview of recently related developments, our Unification Ministry correspondent Oh Jung-hee joins us in the studio. Jung-hee, thank you for making time for us today.
Thanks for having me, Daniel.
Well, first and foremost, over the weekend, we had some jaw-dropping announcement from North Korea. Specifics, the outlines on when and how to dismantle its main nuclear test site. The overall denuclearization discussion is certainly picking up steam.
That's right. Late Saturday night, North Korea announced that it's dismantling its main nuclear test sites sometime between May 23rd and May 25th, inviting also journalists from overseas to assure transparency. Now, the general view is that this move aims at showing a firm and strong determination to denuclearize. Moreover, the demolition of the site makes it difficult for the regime to find another site that fits the requirements to sustain a nuclear test. And whereas the regime's statement underscores its will to dismantle the nuclear test site, watchers believe pulling the plug of its nuclear test site has a meaning that transcends a mere shutdown. With the international community witnessing the shutdown, Pyongyang makes sure to have the upper hand in order to make its own requests to the U.S.
Right, more and more positive developments from North Korea. This measure comes after the U.S. Secretary of State made his second visit to Pyongyang last week. And not only did we see the release of American detainees, we also saw the regime's mouthpiece, the state media, saying that Kim and Pompeo reached a quote, satisfactory consensus at their meeting.
Right, Daniel, but there's actually more to that. Take a listen to this remark from Pyongyang's state media.
After hearing President Trump's verbal message, Kim Jong-un highly evaluated and appreciated President Trump's willingness to solve the issue through dialogue and with a new alternative option.
Here we can learn that Washington has offered Pyongyang, quote, a new alternative option, and the two sides were both satisfied with it. So what is this new alternative option, and what does this have to do with the announcement over the weekend? Take a listen to these experts for their views on what this new alternative option could be.
The U.S. could have shown flexibility to North Korea that if they both set a clear-cut deadline of achieving complete denuclearization, then the process of denuclearization could be broken into multiple stages, just as the North wants.
If we look at what Pompeo said at press briefings following his visit to North Korea, it seems the new content could be about lifting economic sanctions or normalizing relations at a fast pace. Lifting Washington's unilateral sanctions and international sanctions and removing Pyongyang from the list of sponsors of terror create an environment where investment could be made through international funds.
Right, only time will tell what exactly was shared between the two during their meeting. They don't seem completely separate from the North's recent announcement of dismantling its nuclear test site. And Chung-hee, what we're missing from the announcement is the regime's invitation to experts overseas. That differs from Pyongyang's initial plan from, let's say, 3 weeks ago. Why is this so?
Right. The U.S. has actually long been stressing that a detailed inspection and verification involving international experts is the key to complete denuclearization. But if we think from North Korea's perspective, having experts come over to the Punggye nuclear test site could rather expose details of its nuclear development program. Also, dismantling the nuclear test site and inviting foreign journalists to cover the event is a step that's already bold and proactive. It seems that the regime had concerns that inviting experts over to the nuclear test site could portray it as if the actual inspection and verification process started when the summit with the U.S., the real game in fact, has not even taken place. So there is a possibility that the regime could have left experts' verification as a final bargaining chip to use at the summit talks with the U.S.
Right, and of course, this is not the first rodeo for the United States as well. They're also trying to make sure there is no turning back from here on to make sure this time denuclearization is denuclearization and nothing else, and nothing reversal from that from here on.
Right, to make sure that denuclearization happens for sure this time, as we've seen for the last few days, the U.S. is playing an economic prosperity card. So Mike Pompeo has recently said that if Pyongyang completely denuclearizes, it'll be able to achieve economic prosperity, and the U.S. could even bring capital to the regime. And that corresponds with Kim Jong-un's goal of building a better economy, especially with 2018 being the third year of his 5-year economic development plan. Experts say that Washington actually touched upon something that North Korea wants and maybe needs the most.
We've thought that North Korea's ultimate goal is to have nuclear weapons and guarantee its survival through them, but that was actually now. What the regime wants is to form relations with other countries, just like a normal state, and achieve economic development. So to Kim Jong-un, prosperity, though it could sound a little exaggerated, is the most desired goal.
All right, Jang-hee, thank you for the comprehensive wrap-up and a digestible by the cutting down of all the details that we have so far. We appreciate it.
My pleasure, Daniel.
An inter-Korean meeting of high-level officials could take place this week. That's according to the nation's Unification Ministry. During Monday's regular press briefing, its spokesperson, Baek Tae-hyun, mentioned discussions are still underway, and if they do sit down for talks, the two sides are expected to discuss follow-up measures on implementing the Panmunjom Declaration. When asked if the government would raise the issue of the 6 South Koreans detained up north, he replied the government will do its best to resolve the situation, as well as other humanitarian issues, including the reunion of war-torn families. Boosting its economy by giving up nukes, that's the visible direction North Korea seems to be embarking on. A recently published data indicates what the isolated regime stands to gain by opening up for trade with the outside world. Here's Kim Hye-sung to help us break down the benefits by the numbers.
North Korea saw trade boost its real income by up to 4.5% over the last 2 decades. According to the Bank of Korea Monday, North Korea's estimated gains from trade between 1996 and 2016 as a portion of its income averaged between 3.6 and 4.5%. The central bank said it used trade data on the North's trading partner countries sourced from the UN, the IMF, and the Korea Trade Investment Promotion Agency. In that 20-year period, North Korea's trade volume grew threefold from $2.2 billion to around $6.6 billion. The import penetration ratio, or the percentage of imports to domestic demand, which measures the openness of an economy, reached around 20% in 2016, up from the 13 to 18% range in 1996. After a trend of growth, the import penetration ratio dropped starting in 2008 as international sanctions against the regime's nuclear weapons program took a toll. The bank said the figure is lower than the OECD average of 36.6% and South Korea's 33.9%, but that it is similar to the range of France and the UK's 22%. North Korea's main trading partners are China, South Korea, and Japan. Given that the North is currently under tough international sanctions, the bank said these data show that North Korea's economy will benefit from trade, which will help boost its national income. Kim Hye-sung, Arirang News.
A long-awaited breakthrough at the National Assembly, rival parties reached an agreement to normalize parliament after more than a month of standstill, meaning they'll be able to meet the deadline to process the resignations of lawmakers running for the local elections in June. Let's go straight to our political correspondent, Kim Min-ji. Min-ji, a sigh of relief at last.
Daniel, you're absolutely right. It was definitely an announcement anticipated by many. Rival parties finally reached a compromise to normalize parliament, which puts an end to the paralysis that has been in place for 42 days. Now, the agreement hasn't been put on paper yet, but the content is as follows. Rival lawmakers will vote on both a bill calling for a special investigation into an online opinion rigging scandal, as well as the government's extra budget bill, all on May 18th, which is this Friday. Now, this is expected to finally calm a dispute over the manipulation scandal that deepened the divide between rival parties. Now, to give you a recap of this case, a blogger with ties to a ruling party lawmaker is known to have used a computer program to manipulate internet comments on political news articles, with growing speculation that the blogger may have also been engaged in rigging activities in the run-up to last year's presidential elections. Now, rival parties say they have also agreed on how to appoint the special prosecutor for the case, which will see the Korean Bar Association recommending 4 candidates, of which the opposition bloc selects 2, while the final pick will be made by the president. Now, with that agreement in place, all parties were present for a plenary session to process the resignations of lawmakers running for local office on June 13th. Now, today is the deadline to handle the resignations in order to hold by-elections for the vacant districts on the same day as the local elections. And if not, by-elections would have been pushed back to April next year. Now, the situation has been very fluid today, even looking back just a couple of hours, but rival parties have finally managed to get legislative affairs moving again, and hopefully now they will be able to make up for the month and a half that was lost. Back to you, Daniel.
All right, Min-ji, thank you for bringing us the welcome updates. We appreciate it. Moving on, Seoul's Navy launched a new 14,500-ton amphibious assault ship called the Marado, named after the nation's southernmost island. The public debut was held today at a shipyard in Busan belonging to Hanjin Heavy Industries and Construction. At the ceremony, Defense Chief Song Young-moo highlighted the latest addition to the military will contribute to maritime security in Northeast Asia and the world. At 199 meters long, it can sail at a maximum speed of 23 knots or 41 kilometers per hour. Equipped with advanced radar, and the Marado can carry troops, amphibious boats, and helicopters. The vehicle is the nation's second largest scale transport ship in addition to the Dokdo. It will be officially delivered to the South Korean Navy in the year 2020 after trial operations. It's been about a year and a half since written warnings and graphics were put on cigarette packs, and since then there's been explosive growth in the popularity of so-called heat-not-burn electronic cigarettes. Now, Korea is set to become the first country in the world to put graphic labels on those products as well. It'll also be putting tougher warnings on regular cigarettes as well. Kan Young-woo has this report.
South Korea's Ministry of Health and Welfare said on Monday that 12 new warning sentences and graphics will be put on cigarette packs, including so-called heat-not-burn cigarettes. According to the Health Ministry, pictures showing the ravages of cancer will be made more explicit, and written warnings will specifically describe how smoking raises the risk of different diseases. These new labels will appear starting December 23rd. And until now, heat-not-burn electronic cigarettes have had come with only written warnings. But Korea will be the first country in the world to label them with graphic pictures to indicate they can be just as harmful as ordinary smokes. And to make the warnings more effective, the government plans to explore other options as well.
In the future, we will implement stronger anti-smoking policies. For example, we can make the warnings bigger on the cases, or we can introduce plain packaging. Through these regulations, we will put more strict regulations on anti-smoking.
The new pictorial warnings show smokers suffering from cancers of the mouth, heart attacks, stroke, and other side effects of smoking, such as sexual dysfunction. A 13-member special committee, including government officials and civilian experts, worked for 1 year to come up with the new regulations. And reflected in the process was a survey conducted on 1,500 smokers and non-smokers. The Korea Tobacco Association, an industry group, has asked the government to reconsider, saying the claims made in the new warnings are not scientifically proven. It also said the warnings on the heat-not-burn products need more discussion, because it said there is still debate over how toxic they are. Kan Young-woo, Arirang News.
Turning to the world of sports now, let's focus on the lead-up to the 2018 World Cup in Russia, which kicks off next month. Shin Tae-yong, Team South Korea's head coach, finalized his roster. Two English Premier League stars Son Heung-min and Ki Sung-young made the cut, as expected. 5 of the 28-men squad are backups in case of any last-minute injuries. On that list is Hellas Verona's Lee Seung-woo, the youngest player in the team at just 20 years old. Come June, the Taeguk Warriors will play 4 international friendlies before their maiden 2018 World Cup match against Sweden on the 18th of that month. It's time to turn to Michelle Bach at the Weather Center for the updates you'll need. Michelle, we seem to be a step ahead of the season. Tomorrow is going to be warmer than today.
Yeah, that's right, Daniel. For some regions such as Seoul, the daily high is expected to reach the highest so far this season, making it feel much more like mid-summer. As for the high levels of ultrafine dust that have been lingering all day today, it's still high across the country, and it's expected to reduce visibility until tomorrow morning. And into the afternoon, it's going to be windy, clearing away the dust and gradually returning the air quality back to normal. Taking a closer look at our readings, Seoul will begin the morning at 16 degrees Celsius. Daegu and Gyeongju will be about the same at 16 and 15 degrees as well. In the afternoon, the UV levels will be high again, with Seoul expected to be hitting up to 28 degrees, while Daegu and Gyeongju will top out to 30 and 31 degrees respectively. This week, we have straight days of rain in the forecast, and so starting on Wednesday, the hot summer-like weather will slowly cool down. I'll leave you with the weather conditions around the world.
That's all we have for you on tonight's edition of Arirang News Center. Wherever you may be tuning in from, thanks for staying with us.